Up to the top and Magnussen has made a place.
Hello and welcome to highlights of the Lidl Deutschland Tour in its 40th anniversary edition. A race that goes all the way back to 1911, but it had a recent revival after a 10-year hiatus. This is the 7th year of the event being run by ASO, the organisers of the Tour de France, the Vuelta a España, of course, amongst other races. And for the beginning of this 40th edition, the race organisation and the race director Fabian Wegmann had chosen to bring the prologue to the Zollverein Industrial UNESCO World Heritage Site, a fitting start for what is always a fast and brutal prologue at the Lidl Deutschland Tour. This one's slightly longer, 3.1 kilometres. The last couple of years it's only been a little smidge over 2k. It is still, though, very short, and we knew the gaps would be fractions of seconds. This was the course. Not as technical as we've had in recent years. In actual fact, some of you will remember the late crash of Alexander Kristoff 2 years before in Sankt Wendel. Shouldn't have any of that on a day like this, or so we believed as well, because it was, despite the fact that they look fairly tight, those corners, pretty wide road, and the industrial unit really making itself perfect for this course. 3.1 kilometres. Look at that, pan flat. Ignore the rise to the end, you could barely see it either. This was one for the really fast riders, but would it be sprinters or time trial specialists? That was the question. Standard road bikes only allowed, no time trial bikes, and no time trial helmets either. Standard road equipment for the 3.1 kilometres. Glorious weather as well greeted the start of this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour. And the first rider who was off was the oldest man in the race, Roger Kluge, who of course set the fastest time, being the first finisher. We were scratching our heads, though, as to who this kind of thing would suit, and Ilan van Wilder, one of two former winners of the general classification in this race, along with Niels Pollitt, set a really good time, showing his intent on the overall, despite this being a less hilly Lidl Deutschland Tour than we've had in recent years. And Ilan van Wilder, one of those multifaceted riders who's quite capable of turning in a good prologue ride. He was the next of our best times. And then came some of the speed specialists. Simone Consoni, of course, lead-out man deluxe for the likes of Jonathan Milan, who was here, and we knew he would be being called on a lot in the coming week, showing that Consoni himself was in really good form as well. Next came my pick for the ride, Michael Zeilard, who'd been third in the last two prologues at the Lidl Deutschland Tour. And Zeilard was looking good for the fastest time to take over from Simone Consoni. As he came to the line, the gap wasn't quite as much as I thought it might be, but he did take over. I'd predicted he would be the winner of this prologue. Would it turn out that way, though? We'll see. That was as things stood after Zeilard's ride. Ivan Romeo, the time-trialling Italian, the Spanish road race champion, Romeo putting in a really good short time trial, but Zeilard not looking as comfortable as you might think. It was only a small gap over Consoni, and there were some really big riders to come, including Jonathan Milan, who'd won the prologue at the Lidl Deutschland Tour 1 year before. Marco Haller, the Austrian, came to this race in cracking form, and it was turning out to be a really good day for the Tudor Pro cycling riders. Whether that was form, impetus, or bikes, we won't quite know, but I can tell you they had a cracking day at the prologue in Essen. Marco Haller, the next of them, knocking his own teammate Michael Zeilard off the top step and enjoying it as well. There was some nice banter between these two. The question is, though, were they happy that they'd be sitting there to the very end, because there were some big names to come. Niels Pollitt, one of those two former winners overall in this race, of course, would always turn in a good ride on every single course and every stage. The German always wanting to entertain, and he was putting in a very, very good time too. He would come incredibly close to Marco Haller's ride, but as big names like Pollitt went through, you could see that Haller was quite enjoying his time in the Tissot hot seat. Drama building, though, because we knew we still had some very big names to come. Søren Vanskjold came to the race, the man who's had an incredible season, best season of his career so far at the age of 25, nearly caught us off guard because he knocked Haller out of the hot seat. Very determined ride from the Uno X Norwegian. And then came Danny Van Poppel, another big pick, a man who's been third and second on general classification in the last 2 years of the Lidl Deutschland Tour. He would go fourth fastest. Look at the names we had yet to come, though, including Wout van Aert, Sam Watson, the British road race champion in his time trial suit, of course. Look at that. Second fastest, so close to that time of Søren Vanskjold. Here came Wout van Aert. A lot of people watching Wout van Aert starting and believing he'd be the man to do it. And then we had the man pretty much everyone of the German public had come to see, Florian Lipovic, third at this year's Tour de France, starting his ride in the prologue. Not expected to threaten, this man was though. Wout van Aert went fifth fastest. Søren Vanskjold, sitting in the hot seat, knew he'd survived yet another biggie. Actually, the ride by Florian Lipovic was better than people were expecting. You would think he might have had something of a rest after that third place at the Tour de France. Coming to the race here with good form, expected to be actually working for the likes of Danny van Poppel and Jordi Meijers. Then came last year's prologue winner, Jonathan Milan, and as he came to the line, we already knew it was going to be a Søren Vanskjold win.
Yeah, a bit excited for this race and a little bit nervous, so I just tried to go full gas and it worked out. We come here with a good sprint team with some big boys, so hopefully we can hang on in the harder climbs also.
Well, it worked out. It worked out royally because he won the stage and of course took over the blue jersey. 3.5 minutes of hard work for his professional fare on that day, on the Wednesday evening, ahead of Sam Watson, British road race champion, starting this race in cracking form. Søren Vanskjold obviously leading in the Skoda points jersey competition as well as the most consistent finisher so far, although Sam Watson would have to wear that jersey the following day, of course. Day 2, stage 1. Søren Vanskjold just scrapes inside the best young riders classification, which at the Lidl Deutschland Tour is for riders under 25.
Very good job.
So on that occasion it would be Laurens Pithy rolling down 2 places. The Kiwi starting the Lidl Deutschland Tour with very good form. So that had been the sort out after the prologue in Essen. This was the start in Essen on the following morning for stage 1 after the following evening's, the prior evening's prologue, Thursday morning. And the stages in this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour getting shorter and shorter as you go through them. So this one being the longest one, 202.6 kilometers in total between Essen and Herford. First 3 days of this year's race, all in North Rhine-Westphalia, the race in total working its way west to east, and the first 3 all point to point, so transfers very little, far better from the environment, and dare I say it, much better for the riders and the teams too. 2 King of the Mountains points on day 1 to get that classification underway between Essen and Herford. Not big ones, but enough to make sure riders who might be in the breakaway would be battling for that black jersey with the red, yellow and blue dots of the King of the Mountains. Leaving the Zollverein UNESCO World Heritage Site for the final time after the prologue, it had given us some iconic images for the 40th edition of this Lidl Deutschland Tour. Laurens Pithy wearing the white jersey in the competitions that were pretty much all held by Søren Vanskjold. Of course, as I said, Sam Watson in that green Skoda points jersey, which was also held by the winner of the prologue, Søren Vanskjold of Nuex Mobility. Well, they rolled out and we got ourselves a breakaway. Andrew August, the American, Vincent Dorn, and then Miguel Heidemann and John Knoller, both from the Remby Radnet team. Vincent Dorn from the Bike Aid team. So 3 riders from German Continental teams on stage 1 in the breakaway, and it would mean they would then have the chance to battle away for the, well, sprints classification, prizes contained within, the cash prizes of course, and then that King of the Mountains one as well. Vincent Dorn was in cracking form. Problem is, he had 2 of those Remby Radnet riders with him who also fancied having a go at everything. And they were coming close to the first intermediate sprint point in Beckham, about halfway through the stage. Well, in fact, entirely exactly halfway through the stage, and they would start those battles, always being in the breakaway on day 1. A wonderful opportunity. Andrew August, the young American for Ineos Grenadiers, was leading into Beckham. But behind him, there was an obvious battle raging, and with Remby Radnet having 2 riders in there, in Knoller and Heidemann, you would hope, and certainly we did as we watched on, they've got their game plan sorted. On this occasion, John Knoller, the taller of the 2 Germans for Remby Radnet, sitting on behind Vincent Dorn. And Andrew August looking like he wasn't going to get involved in the intermediate sprint classification. It opened up. It was Heidemann going first. Then came Vincent Dawn over the top of him. It's starting to look like Vincent Dawn would get the better of the two Renby Radnet riders. And that's exactly what he did. Taking the 5 points. John Noller getting the 3 points over on the other side of the road. And back in the peloton, as you'd expect, it was Martin Urienstad and his Uno X Mobility teammates who were doing the chasing, not crazy hard, but doing the job, as you'd expect, of the team of the race leader, Swan Vanskold. Back at the back of the peloton, teammates of Vincent Dawn from the Vicade team in those lovely German colours. That kit right there, I think you can make your own mind up. I think it's my favourite kit of all the teams in this year's Lidl Deutschland Tour. Really stands out. Well, these were the scenes of the peloton as a hot day, and it was hot, started to take their toll. Pressure being laid on a little bit by Lidl Trek, staking their claim to a Jonathan Milan stage win. Jacopo Mosca, as it so often is, doing their long, hard turns on the front for them, and combining, much to the delight of Uno X Mobility, with them increasingly more and more of the yellow jersey to Visma Lisa bike. This was the first of the King of the Mountains points, and unfortunately Vincent Dawn getting that one all wrong. Maybe just a little bit too hard into that corner. It would mean that as we came to the first categorised climb, Stromberg, it was Miguel Heidemann there, taking the 3 points. All of the mountains points in the Lidl Deutschland Tour, by the way, are 3, 2 and 1 point. There is only one classification. And this year in particular, there weren't particularly big hills either. So Heidemann taking the 3 points, it was Vincent Dawn taking 2, and Andrew August rolling through for the 1 point. He did have a go at that, August, so giving indications that he was interested in the King of the Mountains competition. This was then the run to the next intermediate sprint point in Gütersloh. And once again, it was those two riders, John Noller and Vincent Dawn, going for it. This time, Noller leading out, not waiting for Dawn to go for it and open up with his sprint. Vincent Dawn sitting on the back wheel of John Noller in front of a fantastic crowd in Gütersloh and coming off the wheel just in time. Vincent Dawn taking the 5 Skoda green jersey points and John Noller getting 3. So the same result as we had at the first intermediate sprint point in Bekum. And all that remained then was one more King of the Mountains point on the Zenberg yet to come. No big beast, as I say, with the King of the Mountains classifications this year. Kilometre-long climb, average gradient of 7.5%, but a max of 9%. So we were getting into some steeper bits anyway that would gradually start to take their toll. As you can see, this year in particular, really big crowds out of the Lidl Deutschland Tour. And really the draw of Florian Lipovitz adding so much to it. If you look at the signs at the side of the road, so many of them saying Lipo on them. It is very much now a country that is in cycling frenzy in Germany. And Florian Lipovitz a massive part of that. Now, this was once again the riders looking for that sprint point. Miguel Heidemann reading it perfectly. Vincent Dawn had gone with him, but Heidemann had scored another 3 points, meaning that he would be in the black and dotty King of the Mountains jersey at the end of the day. And still the pacing, just being steadied out front. Spitzer, as you can see at the top of the screen there, is breakaway. Hauptfeld means main field, as Jens Vogt told me when we were in the commentary position. Once they knew the gap had come right down, as you can see, the peloton flattened out, calmed down, and started to sift themselves into sprint-ready format. Picnic Posternel on the right, and the final man to attack, understandably, was Vincent Dawn. He was in cracking form this week and wanted to be the last man out there, understandably. Part of the reason that the chasing had been quite firm is that the peloton were not just basing their catchback on the finish line in Herford, but in fact, with 6k to go, there was a bonification sprint point that had 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds up for grabs, and crucially, it was on a hill too, so an opportunity for the GC favourites to see if they could sneak some seconds. The gap coming right down on the two out front, and as I'll say, this sorting, this lead out here wasn't about the finish. It was much more about Stuckenberg, the 400-metre climb that had those 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds at the top. We were starting to wonder whether these two would survive to that point, but it then became evident they weren't going to, through a combination of a number of teams pressing hard at the front. This was actually, I think, the best field art we saw of the week. It was a cracking tractor bike affair, one we've seen before, but not possibly done quite as neatly as that one. It was a tidy affair. Fist bump for the two out front, back in the fold, and they would have jerseys and high classification points to go for. This was the run-in to that intermediate sprint point. Sam Watson looking very good for it in the green jersey, thinking he might have got it, but then look at this. Wout van Aert up the inside. Watson maybe could have kept the door closed, but it was an indicative sprint that of who was up for the GC this week, because Riley Sheehan also took 1 second there as well. Really fascinating. This was then the run into the finish. Bonus seconds out the way, and everything about the stage win. Matthew Brennan looking good, but everyone expecting Jonathan Milan to be right there alongside him as they came into the sprint in
There are
Helford.
riders moving up and down all the time. Søren Vanskov, the race leader, is quite a long way back at this stage. This is now inside the final kilometre. They go back under the railway line. And when they pop out the other side, goodness only knows who'll be in the lead. It's a lone attacker. It looks like the colours of Total Energies. This is Lorenzo Monzan. Lorenzo Monzan, the Frenchman, if I'm not mistaken, going clear. What a fantastic late attack from him. I was not expecting that, but he's going to be closed down. And Danny Van Poppel is ready to launch. Danny Van Poppel being led out by Jordi Meijers. Danny Van Poppel going, but Jonathan Milan has got to the front in time. Milan is leading. Jonathan Milan leading. Matthew Brennan alongside him. Who's going to get it on the dip between those two?
This is saying that you won. And they think you won. You don't know.
Did you know something? Because we have no info.
Not yet. Please, sir. That's my contact. 100%.
Okay, it's confirmed.
Yeah! You don't believe it, eh? No.
Let's go! Nice, enjoy it. Oh.
Nice.
We went for the bonus sprint, and we kind of lost each other a little bit, but in the end, I'd saved enough mental energy to kind of navigate in the end, and yeah, it was really close, but to come so close to a guy like Milan is really something special.
I can tell you it was a long and nervous wait for all of us for that moment, but the winningest man in the race already, Matthew Brennan, with yet another big win to his name. But crucially, as people were saying, it was who he'd beaten as well. Jonathan Milan this season being considered one of the best sprinters in the world, and now Matthew Brennan beating him at his own game. Danny Van Poppel, without winning, took over the blue jersey and the race lead, but equal on time with Sam Watson. That prologue had done nothing really to separate people out, and stage one hadn't helped either. There would be more of a sort out needed for sure. Matthew Brennan, having won stage one, went into the green Skoda Sprints classification as the most consistent finisher so far. 15 points for the win. Miguel Heidemann taking on the King of the Mountains jersey. As I say, that new colours this year, those dots, and they stood out nicely in the peloton, I can tell you. Close though between him and Vincent Dawn, everyone expecting those two to be at it again in subsequent stages, and I can tell you they were. Sam Watson taking on the white jersey as best young rider, best rider under the age of 25, despite being pipped by Wout van Aert at that intermediate sprint point, the bonification point. Matthew Brennan second in that classification. Jonathan Milan still young enough to be included in that best young riders competition. Well, the following day started where it had finished the day before, in Herford, still in North Rhine-Westphalia. Beautiful city at Herford as well. Set to roll southwestward in the direction of Nieheim in Arnsberg for stage 2. It was Friday. This one a little bit hillier again, about 1,000 metres more elevation than we'd had between Essen and Herford on the Thursday, and 4 King of the Mountains points. So a big opportunity for the King of the Mountains jersey actually to be won on this day. Lots of riders keen to get in the breakaway to do exactly that. And we expected to see Miguel Heidemann and Vincent Dawn trying to do likewise and make sure they were there to battle for those points as well in that King of the Mountains competition. The bonification sprint point for the bonus seconds coming on the finishing loop of 20 kilometres as well, just on the outskirts of Nieheim-Arnsberg. Would it be as impactful as it had been at the end of stage 1? Jörg Zimmermann, the German road race champion, ready to start as one of 6 national road race champions in this very, very strong field in the 40th edition of the Lidl Deutschland Tour. We expected to see him in breakaways across the whole week. And they rolled out with Danny van Poppel in the blue leader's jersey, but stage winless so far, despite looking good in the sprint in stage 1 and riding a fantastic prologue too. These were the scenes, and these were the breakaway. 5 riders clear, including, as we expected, Miguel Heidemann and Vincent Dawn too. Emils Leerpins was in there, the Latvian rider for Q36.5. And he himself was involved in, wanting to be involved in the various classification points we went through as well. Also in there, Jonas Rutsch, the German. There he was on the front as they went to the first of our King of the Mountains points. And that was in Wiesel, where Jonas Rutsch took the points ahead of Emils Leerpins and Vincent Baudet as the breakaway became just 3 out front. It was turning out to be a really tough day out there. Prior to that point, by the way, Will Barter, the American for Movistar, had spent ages, there he is, trying to get across the gap. Sitting in between the peloton and the remaining 3 out front. He tried and he tried for ages. And I started to wonder whether it was some sort of training effort because he never actually got there. Rutsch, Leerpins and Baudet continuing to work hard out front, but this was a peloton who looked really set on there being a bunch sprint finish in Neheim-Arnsberg. The run into Neheim-Arnsberg, absolutely perfect round that 20-kilometre loop. We had just one more King of the Mountains point to come on the Zuitzertal. These climbs were starting to take their toll, some of them pretty steep in places as well, touching 12 to 14%. Through the forests on the outskirts of Neheim, in the Sauerland region. It's always proven to be a tough region for racing in the Lidl Deutschland Tour, and this year no different at all. The duking between the teams was becoming quite testing back there. Visma Leasebike wanting to be in control of this, thinking about those bonus seconds again for Wout van Aert, and then setting up the finish. Will Barter was still going out front, as were our 3 breakaway riders. Jörg Zimmermann, another day where he wasn't in the break. We expected that to come later in the race, as you would expect with a German national champion in their national stage race. Will Barter was back in. Alexander Kristoff stroking his chin and thinking about maybe that 99th career win, professional win. He's on 98 right now, of course. Geraint Thomas, the Tour de France winner, coming to the front, doing his turn for Ineos Grenadiers. And out front we had Jonas Rutsch on his 170 mil stem, tucking himself down low and getting aero, there we go, on the descent as well. He went over the Zuitzertal climb to get the 3 points there, building himself a position of competition in that King of the Mountains point. We had a little bit of tinfoil caught in the back wheel, in the derailleur, I should say. Thankfully, it came out in the end. The remaining riders out front being lapped up, and everybody's attention was turning to the focus on the intermediate sprint point as well. Once they were on the circuit in Neheim-Arnsberg, bell being rung. Jonas Rutsch went through the line first, and then on that 20-kilometre lap came again a slightly uphill rise to the bonification sprint point with 15k to go, where there were 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds available. In a race like this, it's absolutely crucial, all these bonification sprint points. There's only one every stage, but they were always hard fought. Now this was a tricky crash as well, because it took out Florian Lipovitz, 3rd place finisher at the Tour de France, of course, the German, and Jörg Zimmermann, who did not look good sitting down. Lipovitz gave us the thumbs up. Zimmermann, much worse hurt. He did continue, though, but it was not a nice crash. This was the sprint for the bonification point. Once again, Sam Watson being led out by his team. And it was a replay of the day before because Wout van Aert was there ready. Could he come off the wheel? Well, the answer was yes, he could. And for the 2nd day in a row, Wout van Aert took the 3 bonus seconds. And the rider just behind him, taking the 2 there, Lawrence Pithy, Lawrence Pithy looking really good. Then came a late attack, and there was opportunities for late attacks on this circuit. It was Ivan Romeo, who'd ridden so well in the prologue on Wednesday evening, going on the attack as well. And he was taking clear with him a group. Now, this was problematic. There was all sorts of splits happening behind. I'm not sure that many teams had expected that bonification sprint point to be quite so impactful. And the urban circuit coming back into Neheim-Arnsberg was serving up riders out front, including Jonathan Narvaez, Pascal Enkhorn, Riley Sheehan was there too. Jonathan Milan, rather than wait for the sprint, was having to close things down. He'd brought Matthew Brennan with him as well. It was a fascinating finale, which involved many of the main protagonists of the stage having to battle for this by themselves. Søren Vanskjold, prologue winner, going hard down the left-hand side of the road as we looked at them, taking with him Narvaez and Riley Sheehan. Now, I can tell you, as this happened, this became a really important breakaway for the formation of the race overall across the whole week. Sheehan in really good form, the American. We knew how well Søren Vanskjold was going. You could see the chasing going on behind. They'd have known this was a dangerous one. And with Jonathan Narvaez there, the Ecuadorian road race champion, you had three very fast men here who were well suited to the parkour of the whole week too. Narvaez rolling through hard. We had one rider from Tudor Pro Cycling chasing, but these three were looking very good outside, out front as they approached the finish in Neheim-Arnsberg. That was the 1 kilometre to go. Riley Sheehan not holding back, but the fact that Jonathan Narvaez was sitting on the back was telling for probably the fastest rider in there, but you'd never discount Søren Vanskjold, not least knowing the kind of form he'd come into the race in.
Søren Vanskjold flicks his elbow. I don't think they want to come through now. We're now down to cat and mouse tactics, and they've got to be careful, these three. They have not got much time to play around with. Marius Meyerhoff is chasing, and Jonathan Milan. Don't be surprised to see a Lidl Trek jersey coming up alongside them and thundering straight past, because I think Milan is within catching distance here. Søren Vanskjold, winner of the prologue, is stuck on the front. Jonathan Narvaez is in a prime position here, but what can Riley Sheehan, the American for Israel Premier Tech, do at the back? He is quick, but I think he needs to go early and get the jump on these two. If I was him, I would lay off and rush the gap. What is the young American going to do, though? In the Israel Premier Tech colours, here he goes. But it's not a lightning quick attack. I've got a nasty feeling for Sheehan that he might be leading out Narvaez here. What has Narvaez got left? I think it's going to be just enough on the line, or is it? Is it? He celebrated too soon. No! Riley Sheehan would have taken that, I think, if he hadn't sat up. Marius Meyerhoff hangs on for fourth.
Our plan was to do the race hard, because this is race, if you see, is like for sprinters, and we don't bring here a sprinter really. So we have to think different. In the end, was not like this, and was good final in the end. I think we get a good momentum with the other guys.
Jonathan Narvaez with a brilliant win, but Riley. Oh, would he have won if he hadn't celebrated too soon? I guess we'll never know. Certainly Narvaez was coming with great speed as well, taking the win of stage 2.
I'll just have to really reset today and do everything right, so like I did the day before this one. So I know it's going to be a hard one, and yeah, if they set some high pace on the climbing, then it's going to be tough. So I'm hoping for the same legs tomorrow.
Well, Saturday's stage was expected to be the Queen's stage. Vanskjold would know he would have a fight on his hands for sure. But those three riders who broke away, look at that, shaping the general classification going into stage 3. Vanskjold, understandably, also wearing the green jersey, back in the green jersey, ahead of Matthew Brennan and Jonathan Milan. As so often happens in these short stage races, the points for the finishers going in time with the GC, as is the best young rider, because he's only just in there at the age of 25, Søren Vanskjold. Riley Sheehan would be wearing that jersey the following day. Miguel Heidemann still in the King of the Mountains jersey, as I so often say, all because of that day one breakaway and a few more points picked up here and there. But look how close it was between Heidemann and Dawn, with not too many more mountains to come. And so to the Saturday stage. Starting in Arnsberg, where it finished the day before, of course, Neheim district of Arnsberg, and riding southwestward towards Kassel. Pretty straight line as well, and shorter again this stage at 176 kilometres. The calm before the expected storm, because it was coming, trust me. Not crazy elevation on stage 3 on the Saturday, but 2,858 kilometres of elevation in total gave us the hilliest stage of this year's 40th Lidl Deutschland Tour. Definitely a tour this year for the fast riders, for the sprinters, and for those who fancied sprinting out those intermediate points as well. We had 3 classification climbs. We got them out of the way before we had 3 more sprints, including a very late bonification sprint point. Look at this, just before they came into Kassel. 3 kilometres to go, that one there, with 3, 2 and 1 bonus seconds available. Then the 10, 6 and 4 that are available on the line at each of these finishes in Kassel too. Florian Lipovitz seemingly over the crash that he'd had alongside Jörg Zimmermann, and working hard across the whole of the week for his team, for Danny van Poppel and for Jordi Meyers as well. The crowds, as you'd understand, absolutely loving seeing Florian Lipovitz as well. Sunshine again on the Saturday between Nieheim and Kassel. Another beautiful day, but not too hot. If anything, it was kind of ideal racing conditions for the riders. More forests, more thick forests for us to peer through from the helicopter on our TV shots, but also wonderful vantage points for the massive crowds that were out all around the course on this day. Breakaway was Enzo Leinze, Marco Haller and Yannick Steimler in the middle there. Steimler for the Q36.5. This, I would say, was probably the strongest breakaway we had of the week. 3 really strong riders as well. And Enzo Leinze wanting to build himself some points in the King of the Mountains competition while they're out there. He won the 3 points on the Hirschberger Wand meaning wall. Maximum gradient, about 12% on that one. And Leinze getting the better of Haller and Steimler as well. And we moved on to the next of those King of the Mountains points as well, where Leinze also took 3 points. And the other 2 weren't really contesting them either. This was a wonderful opportunity for the rider from Picnic Postanel to build himself up points that he hadn't amassed yet in the race as well. But also, thankfully for him, he was with 2 of the biggest engines in the race, in the Austrian Marco Haller and the German Yannick Steimler. It was the perfect scenario for him. Chasing behind, actually being led by UAE Team Emirates. It was the American Brandon McNulty riding hard on the front and combining long turns with his teammates as well. Rafał Majka, the Polish champion in his final season of racing, also pulling hard at the front. Wanted to make sure this one came back for a sprint finish. They did not want the late breakaway that we'd seen on stage 2 in Nieheim to happen again. Rafał Majka in his Polish champion's jersey. Look how comfortable Matthew Brennan looked in the green jersey behind them. Not just a sprinter, coping with these hills perfectly well by the looks of things. But this is a Brandon McNulty in pretty determined fashion in this year's race as well. And it was doing damage at the back of the peloton too. They were starting to shake out 1 or 2 of the faster sprinters. As we came to the top of the Butenberg, it was again Enzo Leinze of Picnic Postanel, getting himself to the front, doing a long turn for the other 2 as well, but making sure of yet another 3 points. He was climbing his way back up there behind Heidemann and Dorn in that King of the Mountains competition. Well, the gap had come right down. Look at that, 16 seconds. It was looking like the catch was going to happen, but Haller and Steimler in particular, 2 very canny operators, using the fast descent off the back of it, the clear space around them, to open up the gap again on this lot, and the catch hadn't happened. They might have thought it would, but no. Then came some intermediate sprint points, but the problem is, once we were back on the flat, before we could even get to the sprint point alongside the Demelsee, the enormous inland lake, the reservoir, these 3 were being caught, and it was causing all sorts of problems out the back. The wind was getting up as they got into the weekend, and on Saturday it definitely played its part as well, right the way down. Look at this. This wasn't just the wind, though. This was the climb. Jonathan Milan being distanced off the back of the main peloton. And, of course, Matthew Brennan's team, knowing that Jonathan Milan is the most likely threat to a Brennan win, turning it up as well. It's a cruel thing, cycling, isn't it? But this is professional cycling. It's done for a reason. And their reason for the killer bees in yellows, keep Jonathan and Milan away from getting back in. There was Matthew Brennan in the green. And then all back together. It was Steven Kruijswijk, the Dutchman for Visma Lease Bike, doing a long turn at the front as they came towards the next of the intermediate sprint points, and actually they went through it uncontested. It was Steven Kruijswijk going through there first, getting the 5 points ahead of his own teammate, Tijmen Graat, and Rafael Majka also there doing long turns. But look, talking about long turns, look at the damage done out the back. Look at the riders dripping off the back of that peloton as well. Visma Lease Bike was shredding this one. Would it count, though, for Matthew Brennan? And who were they getting rid of? Brennan comfortable at the front. And knowing the combination of riders in there, there were other teams happy to add to it as well. Total Energies had Emilian Genier comfortable in there, so they had riders here to add to it. Joris Delbove and others rolling through and contributing to the to holding off of the riders who were caught behind. It was a tiny bunch in the end that looked like they'd be heading back in towards Kassel, but it just started to fill up again from behind. And the wind, you can see the angle of that echelon there, even on the climbs, really starting to play its part. Any of the riders who were suffering by day 4, stage 3 of the Lidl Deutschland Tour were finding themselves being shaken out on this day. It was the Queen stage that we expected. Question is, who would it swing in the favour of? There was just one more green jersey sprint point to come in Wiesebeek, Wolfhagen. And it was Visma Lease Bike leading in there too. Absolutely stunning scenes on the Saturday. Glorious weather again. And I'm not just saying it because I was there on the ground, by the way. Massive crowds out during the Lidl Deutschland Tour this year. The Florian Lipovitz effect is in full swing. It really is. And it was stunning to see, actually. Matthew Brennan comfortably taking the green jersey points there, honouring the jersey that he was in Wiesebeek Wolfhagen. And with under 40k to go, we then started to turn our attention to who was left in here and what they wanted to do. Florian Lipovitz was carrying bottles all day for his teammates in what was a slightly cooler day than the Friday, but still pretty hard work and hot affair as well. So it was great to see a third place finisher at the Tour de France, humbling himself to look after his own teammates, of course, and paying them back in the process. Well, inside the final 20k, the gaps between this group and the distance groups off the back seemed to have solidified, and some riders were starting to reassess where they stood in this race as well. It was UAE Team Emirates and Visma Lease Bike who kept swapping turns, and every time Brandon McNulty, the American, came to the front, there seemed to be a thinning down of the group again. He was obviously in incredible form as well. Søren Vanschkold wanted the intermediate bonus seconds as well. He was in the blue jersey, but Jonathan Narvaez just timing it perfectly there. The Ecuadorian road race champion in cracking form in this race and so good at reading the race situation.
Matthew Brennan has got Danny Van Poppel on his wheel. It's a small group, this. Hardly any lead-outs available for anyone. At the moment, it's Søren Vanschkold following the back wheel of Wout van Aert. Wout van Aert can't really look back at this stage. He's got to keep this going. And yeah, Matthew Brennan is in good position. Jonathan Narvaez moving up onto Brennan's wheel. We're not going to see any late attacks from here, I don't think. Sam Watson is up alongside Marius Meyerhofer, actually battling for the back wheel of, I think it might be Marco Haller there as well. We're inside the final kilometre now, into the gradually dragging road, and Wout van Aert is using his last little lift. Søren Vanschkold gapping a little bit back to Marco Haller now. Marius Meyerhofer having to hang on. This is a massive drive from Wout van Aert. Watch the back wheel of Søren Vanschkold. It's closing back up. Sam Watson is coming. Here goes Vanschkold. He's open for the line. Danny Van Poppel following. Where's the green jersey of Matthew Brennan? Brennan looking for the gap, but he can't find it. Danny Van Poppel's going to get this. Matthew Brennan with a hand in the air, but Danny Van Poppel getting the win that he threatened to get all week. But definitely some complaints there from Matthew Brennan. Søren Vanschkold was right there, as was Emilian Genier by the looks of it as well. But a stage win for Danny Van Poppel. We'll need to see that from the front and on high again to see the movement of riders in that finale, but definitely Brennan complaining about the movement of riders around him.
Oh, I seen the footage, so yeah, I think it's the right decision, but it's not the way you want to win. He was the strongest one, but he didn't keep the line, so I think, yeah, if he just kept the line, I think he would have won either way. We have to stay focused. We were focused today, naturally, because we knew it was going to be a really hard stage. And then tomorrow we just have to try to don't make any stupid decisions and yeah, stay together as a team and bring this victory home.
So Danny van Poppel relegated to last place of the group that he was in and given his 4th yellow card of the season too. Søren Vanskjold bumped up to winner. I have to say, we were lucky there wasn't a bad crash in that finishing straight as well. To a certain extent, looking back on it, that's probably the best outcome from that scenario. No crash, thankfully. Look what it had done to general classification. Jonathan Narvaez and Riley Sheehan, those 3 riders on top behind Søren Vanskjold, holding their positions after that late breakaway into Nieheim-Arnsberg on the Friday afternoon. How impactful that breakaway was turning out to be. Søren Vanskjold continuing to lead in the Skoda green jersey competition, and Miguel Heidemann not having to do too much to continue to lead in the King of the Mountains competition, but he and Vincent Dawn were going to need to be sorted out on the final stage on the Sunday, in which there was just one King of the Mountains point right at the beginning. We'll show you that in just a moment because it came after only 16 kilometres on the Sunday. Søren Vanskjold, the best young rider at the age of 25, of course. And so to that final stage between Halle and Magdeburg. It was the only stage that required a long transfer, not crazy long, just a couple of hours to go eastward, but it was the most easterly of all 5 days of racing. To give us stage 4, day 5 of the Lidl Deutschland Tour, and once again, perfect conditions. A finishing circuit as well of 8 kilometres round in Magdeburg. I was there in my commentary position by the finish line, and I can tell you, Magdeburg is now one of my favourite German cities by quite some way as well. It was stunning, really stunning. So they started in Halle having not finished there the day before, which was a first in this year's point-to-point tour. But it was a fitting start for a build-up to that first and only King of the Mountains point on the Johanneshalle. You saw it right there. And that's where that King of the Mountains jersey would be decided. We knew that. And then a long, fairly flat run towards well, the first of 2 intermediate sprint points before those 2 8-kilometre laps, dipping over the river each time as well. The mighty River Elbe giving it setting in Magdeburg for what would be a fantastic finale. And trust me, it really was. The crowds were enormous in Magdeburg, as you are just about to see. A little bit greyer. There were some arm warmers in evidence as well, and we had a bit of rainfall, but certainly not crazy short by any means. 162 kilometres and just over 1,000 metres of climbing. A lot of it came here. Look at this. Brandon McNulty, the American for UATM Emirates, had gone clear. This was the chase behind him, and just like that, the King of the Mountains competition was decided because Enzo Leinse had gone through there to take 2nd place, getting 2 points, and Vincent Dawn just behind him getting the 1. So Enzo Leinse going up to 11 points, Vincent Dawn on 11 points, but crucially, Leinse had won more King of the Mountains first places. He'd taken 3 and Vincent Dawn had taken 2. So that is how they were separated. And Enzo Leinse of Picnic Post-NL ensured that Picnic Post-NL had a jersey to take home with him. All he needed to do was finish the final stage. This was quite some ride being done by Brandon McNulty. I was stroking my chin, trying to work out what it was in aid of. Was he really trying to stay out there? But he knew that he wouldn't be riding the Vuelta a España because that had started the previous day on the Saturday. This race overlapping with the Vuelta, so none of these riders would be riding the Vuelta, giving it everything for the Lidl Deutschland Tour. Quite a few of them then going to the pleased to report. But yes, the wind caused distinct problems on the road between Halle and Magdeburg. And it was making riders have to pay very close attention to holding the wheels around them. We came to an intermediate sprint point, and it was Søren Vanskjold winning the 5 points through there with under 50 kilometres to go. but the race needing to be controlled now that Brandon McNulty was back in as well. Lots of opportunity for late attacking, and it would take teams who really wanted to make this a sprint, make it one. You could expect it, you could see it. It was, of course, the former German champion, former winner of this race, Niels Pollitt, as we'd always expect him to do on the final day, going on the attack. He was covered by Uno X Mobility's William Bloom-Levy, the Dane. It was interesting to see that there were teams, including Jonathan Narvaez's own team, who were happy to go on the attack. Niels Pollitt always happy to go on the attack, but there were more coming too. And this was going to take quite some controlling were it to come down to a sprint finish as well. And as we came back into Magdeburg, it became obvious that that was going to happen. First time across the finish line, it was a green jersey sprint point. Jacopo Mosca leading through there for the Lidl Trek team, and a chance for the peloton to take in the 8-kilometre lap. First of all, get to know its corners. It wasn't a particularly tricky or technical circuit either. It was dry. It was well up for the general classification in this race too, the American. But the question is, how much energy had you used? This was the first of 2 crashes in the run-in to the finish. It was nasty. It upset Sam Watson. It also took out Alexander Kristoff as well. And, crucially, some of the big sprinters too, including Phil Bauhaus.
We came in with the plan, and we were really motivated to kind of do well today. And I think when you kind of have that ambition in the team and everyone really fights for it, it really creates that sense of we want to win. So really happy to kind of finish it off for everyone today.
Brennan getting his second stage win of the week, doing it again to prove a point almost. 11th win, professional win this year for Matthew Brennan, ahead of Wanskold and Jonathan Milan.
Usually it's a big team win like this one. You have your mates working together for several days for you to win, and they are backing you up and believing you. So it's also a great team win.
Not many people were talking about Søren Vanskov as a big favourite this week, but we should have known better. He's already won the Baloise Belgium Tour, now the Deutschland Tour, to add to 3 other stage races on his palmares. Enzo Lensay took the King of the Mountains overall with some very clever riding on the final day ahead of Vincent Dorn and Miguel Heidemann, who'd worn that jersey all week. Best young rider, of course, the 25-year-old Søren Vanskov, winning the race overall and just his last chance to win that classification this year at the Lidl Deutschland Tour. Riley Sheehan, though, will have another chance, I suspect. And there was our top 3, Narvaez and Sheehan, either side of a victorious Søren Vanskov. It had been a fantastic week of racing in Germany. For the 40th edition of the Lidl Deutschland Tour, the industrial setting of the prologue in Essen, the brilliant ride by Søren Vanskov to remind us at the beginning of the week just how strong he was. Fantastic breakaway attempts, the King of the Mountains competition that was contested all to the final day as well. Beautiful lush green forests, sprints that kept us guessing. 3 unpredictable days in which I couldn't quite call the winner right. It kept me on my toes. It kept you lot on the edge of your seats as well, because this Lidl Deutschland Tour never failed to surprise and amaze. And that breakaway there, won by Jonathan Narvaez, in the end would shape the general classification. Brandon McNulty, strong throughout. We had controversy, we had relegations, and we had riders back in the blue jersey in Søren Vanskov. The wind turned up just in time for the weekend too, as did the crowds once again in Magdeburg to witness a second stage win for Matthew Brennan.